I am here today to talk about the unmasking of a generation that's been happening right before our eyes. And this is not necessarily the generation gap that many of us have heard about, but rather the mental capacity gap, or what I call the brain rot generation. This is the idea that there is something going on where we are seeing younger and younger people showing signs of cognitive decline. And I mean really early signs, sometimes starting in their 20s and even their 30s. The evidence has been building. Now, it used to be that if you were in your midlife or older, maybe in your late 40s and older, and you started showing signs of forgetfulness or other types of cognitive issues, we would say, okay, well, probably at risk for Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia. Probably not. Now we see younger and younger people who are starting to show these signs. And so this has led me to do this deep dive into the research on this topic to try to understand why is this happening. And I want to share with you some of the things that I've found. It's alarming, but it's also empowering because once you know about this, then you can take steps to protect yourself and even reverse some of this trend. So let's go ahead and jump into it. One of the biggest pieces of evidence that we have is coming from large studies that look at twins. These studies are looking at the inheritance of Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's is one of the most common causes of dementia, but it's also one of the most complex and challenging diseases to study because it's so difficult to get access to the brains of people who have had it. We don't have a good understanding of what causes it or how to treat it effectively. But in recent years, we've made some progress in understanding the genetic basis of Alzheimer's, and that's led to some very interesting findings. We know that there are several genes that are associated with an increased risk of Alzheimer's. The most significant of these is a gene called apolipoprotein E, or a POE. And specifically, there's one variation of that gene, a POE4, that has been associated with an increased risk of Alzheimer's. But what's really interesting is that we do and see the effects of that staying in people until they in their 40s or 50s. And so this suggests that there are other factors at play as well. In fact, there are a number of other genes that have been associated with Alzheimer's, and they all seem to be involved in different aspects of brain health. Some of them are involved in immune function, others are involved in cell signaling, and still others are involved in the transport of molecules within the brain. But when we look at all of these genes together, it seems like they're all contributing to a common pathway, which is the loss of synapses between neurons in the brain. Synapses are the connections that allow neurons to communicate with each other, and they're essential for memory, learning, and other higher-order functions. And so when we lose synapses, we lose the ability to store memories, learn new things, and perform other tasks that require us to use our brains. Now, this is happening in everyone, but some people are able to resist this process better than others. And that's due to something called cognitive reserve. Cognitive reserve is a measure of how much mental capacity we have available. How much mental capacity do we have available? In other words, if you think of your brain as a muscle, cognitive reserve is how much strength you have left in the tank after you've done a workout. People with high cognitive reserve are able to resist the effects of age-related declines better than those with low cognitive reserve. And the way we measure cognitive reserve is through things like education, occupation, and then also engagement in mentally stimulating activities. Things like reading, writing, doing crossword puzzles, playing games, and so forth. Okay, so here's what we have. We've got our genes. We've got this idea of cognitive reserve. Now let's look at the environment. What are we learning from the environment that might be contributing to this problem? Well, interestingly enough, we're finding that mental well-being is deteriorating across generations. So as we look at people who are getting older, and older meaning they're 70, 80, 90, 100 years old, we see that their mental capacity is declining. But what's interesting is, when we look at the next generation down, their mental capacity is declining at a faster rate. And when we look at the next generation down, their mental capacity is declining at an even faster rate. And so this points to something in the environment that's causing this decline, and it's getting worse over time. Now, there are many possible explanations for this, but ultimately it seems to be related to stress. Stress is thought to be a major contributor to cognitive decline. When we're under stress, our bodies produce hormones like cortisol that can damage brain cells and impair memory. And we know that stress is becoming more and more prevalent in our society. There are many possible explanations for this, but ultimately it seems to be related to changes in our lifestyle. As we become more technologically advanced, We're able to do more and more with less effort. And so we tend to put more and more pressure on ourselves to be productive and successful. And this can lead to chronic stress that impairs our cognitive function. So here's the good news. There are things that we can do to protect ourselves against cognitive decline. One of the most important things is to maintain a high level of cognitive reserve. This means keeping our minds active by learning new things, engaging in mentally stimulating activities, and staying socially active. Another important thing is to manage stress effectively. This can involve things like exercise, meditation, or spending time in nature. And it's important to make sure that you get enough sleep. Sleep is essential for memory consolidation, and it's also important for brain health in general. Right, so now let's talk about the elephant in the room. If we're all experiencing cognitive decline, then why am I talking about it in terms of a brain rot generation? Well, it's because I'm concerned that the rate of cognitive decline is accelerating. It used to be that we would see someone in their late 60s or 70s showing signs of cognitive decline. Now we're seeing it in people in their 40s and 50s. And in some cases, we're even seeing it in people in their 30s. And that's alarming because it suggests that we're losing our cognitive abilities at a faster rate than ever before. And so my concern is that if this trend continues, we're going to end up in a world where fewer and fewer people are able to maintain their cognitive abilities as they age. And that's not just going to affect the individuals who are experiencing cognitive decline. It's going to affect their families and their communities as well. So I think it's really important that we do everything we can to protect our cognitive abilities as we age. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Are you seeing this trend in your own family or in your own life? And if so, what do you think is causing it? Let me know in the comments below. If you're interested in learning more about what you can do to protect your cognitive abilities, I highly recommend checking out the links in the description below. We'll be posting a lot of helpful resources there that will help you keep your mind sharp as you age. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe so that you never miss an update from Senior Vitality 365. Stay healthy, stay happy, and stay engaged.